Now we need to get some of the distance in, and there's a lot of houses there and that could be really, really complicated. I just want to simplify it down into a few colours, and I'm going to use something which I call damp next to damp. So I'm mixing up some cobalt blue and some light red and some burnt umber and some ultramarine. The cobalt blue and the light red just very well watered down for the distant hills. You can see I can paint right up to the heads doing it this way, so no white halos. And now the buildings can go in, which are just slightly darker in tone. And don't worry too much about these. I'm adding a little bit of raw sienna to that as well to make it varied. Add some blue into that to push it back into the distance. If it's too bright, it will come forward at you. And then just add a little bit more brown for the roofs. Lighten this behind the child's head. We can just darken up his head in a minute once that's dry. And we've got a little bit of a wall there as well, so that can be very pale. It's the cobalt blue and the light red, and just take that into it. And the sea. Now we need to know what colour we're doing the sky before we put the sea in, because the sea is always just a couple of tones darker. So I'm going to use ultramarine, a tiny bit of burnt umber, and just using the wash brush put the sea in. And with this good point, I can just take that right up to the figures. Now before I put the sky in, I'm going to put some shadows in, and that's going to be a mix of burnt umber, and ultramarine, which I'm not really mixing very well. I'm leaving it to mix sort of itself. So I'm going to start with some brown in the middle. And then I'm just going to bring some blue into that so that you don't have a shadow colour which is all exactly the same. It can be a little bit boring if it's all the same. So by doing it this way, you're breaking it up and just adding some interest. Right, I need to let that dry, and then I can turn the paper upside down to paint the sky. Right, it's all dried and I've turned the paper upside down to paint in the sky. First of all, I'm going to wet the sky area. This just gives you a little bit of time for applying your wash, and it will dry lighter. Now I need a mix of ultramarine and a tiny bit of burnt umber. Plus I'm going to put a little bit of raw sienna in as well. Just a little bit of raw sienna here. And then the ultramarine and burnt umbers going in. And having wet the paper, that helps you to sort of blend that in. There's a light area running through here, so just take some of that out with water. And then a darker area there, I'm just putting some French ultramarine in almost neat, just here. Or just a damp brush, I just sort of blend that in a little bit. Right, I need to let that dry, then I'm going to turn the paper back around the other way again. At this stage, I'm not quite happy with the composition of the colours and how they're laid out, so I'm going to wash out a little bit and then move the raw sienna over to the other side. Don't worry if you have to do this, it's not a problem and it's nothing to panic about. So with just clear water and the whopper brush, I'm just rubbing that over the area where I don't want the paint to be. As you can see, a lot of that's lifted out and it will dry quite a lot lighter. Now I want it to be the other side, so I'm just going to wet that area so it blends in nicely. And then add some raw sienna to that side. I want to bring it forward. Just blend here. Now put in the reins, so a mix of Prussian blue and sepia and some very dry brush marks. Right, now our paint's completely dry, and it must be absolutely dry before you do this. I'm going to take out my pencil marks with an eraser. Now you need a putty eraser. I just find that this brightens up the painting, but there is nothing wrong at all with leaving pencil marks if you like them. It just needs a little bit more colour. What I'm going to do is just put in some alizarin crimson and burnt umber and blues into the corners. And now some ultramarine. A little bit of burnt umber. Not too much, you can overdo this stage. And now with some clear water, I'm just going to let that bleed a little bit into it. And we've got some people in the distance, so with a little mix of ultramarine and burnt umber, just so it's on the blue side, we get these figures in. Because we do want to create the impression of a very busy beach in the summer. Just tiny little marks in the distance. And that's our painting complete. As you can see, we've created a lovely atmospheric painting of a day out at the seaside, and you too can create that with just a few simple brush marks.
Now available on DVD. Try these techniques yourself at home whenever you wish. The extended version of today's workshop is now available to order on DVD from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.